want to say this before we start. When we think about self-care, oftentimes we think that that's something that we have to work for. I have like it's like PTO, pay time or leave. It's like, okay, how much leave have I accrued? Do I have time to take a day off? But that's not the case when it comes to you taking care of yourself. Self-care is not a luxury. It is a necessity. So I want you to even kind of shift how you think about self-care and how you prioritize, taking care of you. Because if you don't, you may have heard this saying, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. Again, I had the pleasure of working with a lot of colleagues. One of my coworkers, she would take off for her parents. She would take off for her neighbors. Her neighbors unfortunately got sick. She had to, say, hey, Miss Phillips, I'll be out for a little bit. Go ahead. Her daughter had a baby. She took off for that. What do y'all think eventually happened to her? She got sick. And guess what? He was a nurse. Yeah, I know, right? If any nurses, I see some scrubs. Any people in the medical profession in here? So y'all know exactly what I mean. We can be the worst at taking care of us. So she spent so much time taking care of, again, her parents, her neighbors, her children, her grandchildren. But then when it came to her, she didn't know. She was like, something was going on. She's like, I'm not the same. I'm having these aches and pains. I'm in the ER, just random things going on. Y'all, what do you think it was? Stress. It was right. She didn't think it was stress. She didn't think it was stress, but over 75% of illnesses are related to stress. She thought that, maybe it's just, I need to get more rest or take a day off. No, it was the culmination of taking care of everybody, because she would advocate for people too. Sometimes people don't always speak up for themselves. She was that person. She was going to advocate, but when it came to her, she was not doing the best job. So we have to realize that self-care starts with you. That saying, charity starts at home. So now I want to get into burnout, because I saw some heads nodding when I said burnout. I want to first give you all the signs of burnout so you can be aware of it if you are burned out, because sometimes you don't know. The first sign of burnout is you're going to feel exhausted, emotionally and physically. And this is not that exhaustion where you can just, I'm going to catch up on rest on the weekend. How many of us say that? I'm going to catch up on rest. A friend of mine, he got at me. He said, man, that's not a real thing. You cannot catch up on sleep. But it sounds good, though, right? It's like when you say it, you feel like, okay, I'm going to catch up on rest this weekend. Then something happens. Like, I'm planning to chill this weekend. I was driving here and somebody sent me a text. Hey, we doing the men's barbecue. I'm like, oh man, I had already planned on just doing nothing, but that kind of sounds good. But it does, right? Right. It's like, is that self-care? Those are some of the inner battles we have with ourselves when we try to think about how to take care of ourselves. But yeah, that first sign, y'all, is exhaustion. You're going to just feel like you can't get anything done. You're so tired. You're so drained, physically and mentally, and emotionally as well. That's the first sign. The second sign of burnout is you're going to feel like you can't get anything done. So your to-do list, that to-do list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And you're like, why am I not able to check things off? Like, what's going on? That's because you're going into burnout. And then the third sign, anybody know what the third sign is? You're going to be really, really negative. So you're going to be cynical. And you're just complaining. Guess who you complaining to? Yeah, anybody who gonna listen, right? So that could be your friends, your kids, anybody who has time. You're talking about all the stuff that's going wrong in your life. And this this starts to become the norm. Somebody could call you, and you probably already know. If somebody calls you, you know they want to complain about the job, or they want to complain about a family member. You know before you even pick it up. They not, they should probably be here, but that's what we're talking about. So those are some of the 3 indicators, y'all. So if you notice you're exhausted, you can't get anything done, like you just feel so overwhelmed, and on top of that, you're very negative, and that becomes your mantra. I remember when I was working again in the clinic, I had a colleague where she was so negative. Every day she would just complain, even like if things weren't that bad. Some days it's not that bad, right? But she would find something to complain about. So I had to like slowly kind of distance myself from her, and it was hard because we were close, right? Like we started work like maybe a month or a couple weeks apart. So those people you start with, you kind of bond with them. But once I noticed, like even on days I'm trying to like just get through, I'm trying to feel good, she would just start dragging about whatever. Yeah, so draining. So I had to, like those negative Nancy's, I had to distance myself from her. And it can be challenging too. Like I'm not gonna say it was the easiest thing to do because these are your people, these are your friends. But in order to take care of you, sometimes you have to set that boundary, that distance. I had a family member like that where he was complaining about other things, but I remember we hadn't talked for a minute. Like it went a couple of years. Like we didn't fall out or anything, but just kind of I'm doing my thing, he's doing his. And he called me. He was like, "Man," we caught up, and he said, "You wanted me to get my stuff together, huh?" I never told him that he needed to get himself together, but he recognized like, where Jason is going and where my conversation is going is not in alignment. So sometimes we have to kind of distance ourselves from certain people, and that's the way of helping them, because they're going to see you're still taking care of yourself. So we talked about the signs of burnout. There's also stages of burnout too. So it's not like you just automatically get into like a full-blown burnout mode. It kind of like gradually rises up. So the first stage of burnout is called the honeymoon phase. Right? Right? Why do y'all think it's called the honeymoon phase?
Gradually get into it.
Yeah. What'd you say, man? Exactly. You don't think anything is wrong. How many of y'all, and it could be, it doesn't have to be right now, but you've had a position or a job where when you first got the job, you are elated. Like you're so happy. You going from this number to this number, so you're like, okay, I can get this, I can get that, I can take this trip. You're not even thinking about being burned out. Like nobody gets a job, you're like, oh man, I might be burned out. Like that is the furthest thing. I know when I get a new position, I'm calculating, okay, after taxes, how much is my check gonna be looking like? Right? Right? That's all I'm really thinking about. And when the work starts to pile on, you want to just kind of do a good job. You don't want to take a day off because you just started, so you don't want anybody judging you or looking at you funny. So you just keep pushing through. So then that second stage is called the onset of stress. And that's when that stress just starts to kick in, where you're like, man, this is a long week, and it's only Monday, Tuesday. Like today is Tuesday, but for some of us it feels like it's probably been a long week already. That's that onset where something's going on, but you still just kind of like you just push through. You don't even start talking about it. You don't go to the doctor. You just say, I'm gonna just keep going. Then you go into the third stage, which is chronic stress. So during this stage, now those aches and pains are really starting to catch up to you. You're starting to lose a little bit more sleep in that third stage. You're starting to really wonder, like, maybe I should schedule that doctor appointment, or maybe I should talk to a therapist. It's a little bit much at this point. Then you go into the fourth stage, where now you burned out. At this point, it's hitting you emotionally. You're feeling it. When you wake up, you're like, oh my, here we go again. That's the fourth stage. And then at fifth stage, that's when it's full blown. And I hate to say it like that, but I got to be honest with y'all. That's when now it's taking over all parts of your life. So it's one thing we can typically handle when stress is hitting us and it's only at work. We can pretty much handle that, right? Or maybe you have some personal things going on, family, relationship stuff. If it's only that and you can just focus on work, you can do that. But when it's coming on, when it's on both ends, that's a terrible combination. Guess how long it takes to recover from burnout? You said forever, right? Yeah, a friend of mine I know, she moved to like I think Paris or somewhere. She just started a whole new life because she said she was burned out. But it happens, y'all. It can take months or sometimes years to recover from burnout. And that's really to say how deep the burnout can hit us. But we often don't know until it's too late. It's not until we get into that fourth and fifth stage where we start to take action. And sometimes by then, sometimes it's too late. I say that all the time, especially like for, being a therapist and a coach, working with individuals. Sometimes people come in and they just want to talk about like, maybe they're about to get married or a new relationship, having some minor issues. So they feel like, well, that's really all I have. And I'm like, this is the best time for you to come and talk. Because now we get a chance to get to know each other. I can kind of get a sense of your history. You're not coming to me in a crisis mode. How many of us ever had a toothache? But right, exactly, right? So sometimes it gets to a point where you got to get that joker pulled because, it's just progressed to that. And when you get it pulled, it's not like you get it pulled next day you just feel so much better. I wish it was like that. It takes a while. And those same practices that we put on our physical health, we have to start thinking about our mental health the same way. Yeah. And it takes a while because you got to now build up routines. It's not something that you can just snap into. You have to build on that. And it's a shift. It's a shift in the way you live and the way you think about living too. So now we talked about burnout. We talked about the signs and the stages. I want to get into signs of stress. Like, how are you recognizing that you are stressed? One thing that you're going to notice, worrying. Worrying all the time. So when you're worrying, your sleep is going to be off. Y'all ever been sitting there, and this is when it's really bad too, when you can't go to sleep, like something is on your mind, whether you replaying something that happened earlier in the day, you're dreading the next day, but you really know, like, it's taking me a while. And sometimes you may try to take a sleep aid or you try to, call somebody, but when your sleep is impacted, it's a problem. That's one of the signs. Another significant sign of stress is from a physical standpoint, you have aches and pains and you will not know like why. You won't know the source. You feel it, but you don't know why is this happening. Like what's going on? Other signs, your relationships will just not be as healthy. And sometimes it could be that person, but sometimes it really could be us. This is why when you take care of like yourself first, you can step into a relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, more whole. And you're not just looking for that person to change because you've already are doing the work on yourself. So y'all, those are some of the indicators. Also changes in your behavior. Got to talk about that. We talked about sleep, but also changes in your eating patterns. Sometimes, like, how many of us overeat when we're stressed? How many of us don't want to eat when we're stressed? Right? It can go both ways. Either way, you're throwing your body off. Your body don't know what you're doing. That's the sign that you need to regulate yourself better. Also, you could find yourself more angry, more annoyed, more irritable. Sometimes anxiety, it presents as anger. So those are some of the signs that we want to start to really kind of pay attention to because they'll creep up on us and then we'll lash out. So now that we talked about some of the things to recognize, I want to move into how do we manage the stress? Because it's one thing to know what's happening, but then how can we do better about it? I'm going to give y'all an easy way to remember it. It's the CARE acronym. So the C in CARE stands for communicate. What type of communication do y'all think I want y'all to strive for? Yep, sharing. Yep, and being assertive when you're sharing too. Because sometimes what will happen is with our communication patterns, we become passive, where we don't say anything. A lot of stuff is just building up over and over. Like we feel it, but we're not expressing it. We're thinking it, but we're not communicating it. So in our head, sometimes we like, why is this person doing this? Or why is this happening to me? But that's as far as it goes. We're just talking to ourselves, which, I mean, that's cool and all, but it's not going to help change anything. So we become passive, and then sometimes we become passive aggressive. We can do that real good, can't we? And like I remember, I had two colleagues going at it, and they were going at it through email. And I told one of the gentlemen, I said, "Hey, you cannot do this." And he was like, "Well, she started it." He's a 55-year-old man. 55-year-old man, but that was his way of, being passive aggressive. He was gonna go back and forth. That's not acceptable. Then sometimes we just become straight up aggressive, where we're not even passive. We're just, we're more hostile. We're more confrontational, and we can be aggressive too, not just with our language. Sometimes it's in our demeanor. We're staring at somebody, or we become physically violent. There's altercations that arise. So what we want to strive for is being assertive, because when you are assertive, you're going to be more confident. You're going to be more cool, calm, collected, and then you can have a chance to truly express yourself in a way that other people can hear you. And once you practice being assertive, because it does sometimes take work, you'll notice you'll feel better about a situation. Earlier today, I was doing a podcast, and the person I was on the podcast with, she couldn't, we had some issues with scheduling and things of that nature because she had family issues. But I shared with her, I appreciated her being honest, because that showed that, one, she was authentic, and she was confident enough to let me know, hey, I got this going on, I can't make it. How many times do we try to squeeze something in knowing we should not? knowing we should not. I didn't even know. So I was like 18, 19. I remember riding with a friend. It was maybe summertime, because I'm from Detroit. So, in Detroit. Are you from the D? Okay, that's close enough. Right, so we were riding, and we were going to a barbecue, because in Detroit, the summers only last like that. It's not like here. Here, summer is 6 months. There, it's 2. So we were going to a barbecue, and then another friend called, and they were like, "Hey, I'm having this going on." I was like, "Okay, we'll pull up in whatever." She was like, "Jason, you just double booked." I'm like, "What are you talking about, double booked?" She's like, we going here, and now you're trying to commit to, oh, I do that all the time. I didn't know that was a thing until she pointed it out. As opposed to really kind of checking my calendar first before you overcommit, or saying, hey, I'm on my way here, I can't make it. Because being assertive sometimes means saying no.
Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to say no. Right? How do we say no in the nicest way? No. No just means no. Sometimes you just can't. You really, or if you do say yes, you're going to say yes, but it's going to be a not good yes. You should just stay home with that energy, right?
I'm going to let you know.
Exactly. You know what, too? I used to tease people. We used to go bowling. One of my jobs, every Friday, we would go bowling after work. And I would ask one of my friends, I say, hey, you going? I'll see what's up. Sometimes she would, but But it used to frustrate. I'm like, we're going. It's gonna be Friday in a couple days. I'll see what's up. That was her way of saying, look, I'm gonna let you know. Take it or leave it.
Right.
She was being assertive. And I mean, again, fast forward 15, 20 years later, I respect her for it at the time. It frustrated me, but I can see now why that's important to do. Sometimes you really just can't. You can't do all or be all things to all people.
Right.
And that's hard to recognize. That is so hard. I didn't notice it until I was working with a young lady. She had like a son. She was taking care of her mom and going to work. But she was really stressed out, really anxious. So I was talking to a mentor of mine, trying to get some advice on how to help her. And this is where he was like, Jason, she's a good mom, she's a good parent, but she's not a good person to herself. I had never heard it put that way before. Because she was a great mom. She was always taking her son here or there. She would take care of her mom. She was doing good at work. She may have been at school, but I didn't realize that she could do all that and not be a great person to herself. So it starts with communicating your boundaries, communicating what you need. So that's the C. The A stands for assess. You have to be able to assess what you need. Now, sometimes we don't know, but that's a time for you to talk to somebody. You go to your doctor, you go to your therapist, figure out what can I do better. But when you do that assessment, you get a chance to ask yourself, how am I doing? Like, how am I truly doing? Because y'all know sometimes we can lie to ourselves, we'll fake it, we'll keep pushing, but you probably need to take better care of yourself. We like to skip that part. So the more self-aware you can be, the better you can do, taking care of yourself, the more you can do on your healing journey. Somebody asked me this morning, how do I know if I've healed? Which I'm like, that's a loaded question. It's tough. It's a tough question, but I shared when you are more self-aware, this doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, but when you can start to recognize patterns, okay, this used to happen, you used to respond this way. You're feeling this, you used to do this, or you used to think it through like that. When you can identify it and start to change it and say, I'm not going that way anymore.
Oh, I'm there.
When you can say that, that's how you know you're on your healing journey, because you're more aware.
Right.
I share it, it's like if you ever have struggled with substances, or somebody has struggled with addiction, we always tell them to play the tape forward. What do y'all think that means?
See yourself out of it.
See yourself out of it and see yourself, go ahead.
I was just going to say, see yourself not doing it.
Yeah, see yourself not doing it and see yourself like, what would happen if you do this? If I turn left, knowing the store is here, if I turn left, you know what might happen. If you go to this barbecue and you know they're going to be drinking, what might happen? So when you can play the tape forward and say, you know what? I don't want to see that anymore. I want to change the direction of the tape. That's how you know you're doing a great job assessing where you're at. So that means you have to be honest and you have to be vulnerable, but you have to be transparent as well. So assessing, it can be challenging, but with the right tools and then really the commitment, you can do it. So that's the A. So C is communicate, A is assess. The R, when you are taking care of yourself, the R is for recharge. How many of us would love a vacation right now?
Amen.
Right? Where would y'all go? I just want to know.
Anywhere.
Jamaica, that's what I'm thinking too. Where else?
Somewhere.
Aruba. Anywhere
Aruba?
away from
Oh,
them.
yeah, Aruba. You said anywhere away from the kids?
Oh, you heard that?
Yeah, where else would y'all go? Anywhere else fun? You said Hawaii? Yeah.
I
So,
want to go somewhere to a cabin with like uninterrupted, like no phone service, no.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
You can get that in North Carolina.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Sometimes we feel like the vacation has to be so far away, right? Like we can't go to Hawaii every week, like or Jamaica or I mean, I wish we could, right? Just go to Bali and just. But a getaway or somewhere where you don't have any phone or no disturbances for that day or weekend, You could create that. The E, what do y'all think the E is for? Somebody mentioned it earlier. The E is execute. Because there are times where we know all of the things that we should probably be doing or we need to be doing. Sometimes we don't know how to do it. We could talk more about that. But sometimes we do know. Like we know we should, make our appointments. We know we should say no or get our sleep, but we don't. I saw a meme the other day that said something like when you scroll Instagram for 5 minutes, the next thing you know it's 3:30 in the morning. You're like, oh no. Because that sometimes it happens. Like time goes by so quick. Like it just goes by. So if we don't execute, that time will really, if we don't like leverage it, because again, like we can't catch up, we can't like turn it back. So those are some of the things, y'all, I want us to really kind of think about. Again, communicating our boundaries, assessing what we need, knowing how and when to recharge. And there's no wrong way to do it. Like some of us like to just be in a cabin. Some like to be in Aruba. Doesn't matter. It's what you need. But when you do the assessment, then you know. But then most importantly, we have to execute. We have to. There are some things that we know, okay, I need to say no to this. And saying no is taking care of you. Right. It's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. People don't want the rundown, burnt out versions of you. They don't. They don't. You don't want that version of you either. So just do yourself a favor and really pour into yourself, and be unapologetic about it.